Hey, good morning. Welcome to Line by Line Bible Studies. It's not quite noon yet. All right. So, we're continuing today in the book of Daniel at chapter 11 still, and we're picking up at verse 38 with the analysis. Though I wanted to talk about one other thing in an earlier verse that I thought I wanted to. Well, I mentioned it, but I wanted to look at something in the Hebrew that I think I forgot. All right. So we'll begin reading. Let's begin reading where we left off last time, where we began at 33. Like I said, we've read the chapter a lot. I don't want to read the whole sequence of wars of the king of the north and the south. And also the Antichrist we've talked about significantly. So we're just going to start at verse 33 today with the reading. And they that understand among the people shall understand. And they that understand among the people shall instruct many. Yet they shall fall by the sword, and by flame, by captivity, and by spoil many days. Now when they shall fall, they shall be holpen with a little help. But many shall cleave to them with flatteries. And some of them of understanding shall fall, to try them, and to purge, and to make them white, even to the time of the end, because it is yet for a time appointed. And the king shall do according to his will. And he shall exalt himself, and magnify himself above every god, and shall speak marvelous things against the God of gods, and shall prosper till the indignation be accomplished, for that is determined shall be done. Neither shall he regard the God of his fathers, nor the desire of women, nor regard any god, for he shall magnify himself above all. But in his estate shall he honor the God of forces, and a God whom his fathers knew not shall he honor with gold and silver, and with precious stones and pleasant things. Thus shall he do in the most strongholds with a strange God, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory. And he shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain. And at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him. And the king of the north shall come against him like a whirlwind, with chariots and with horsemen, and with many ships. And he shall enter into the countries, and shall overflow and pass over. He shall enter even into the glorious land, and many countries shall be overthrown. But these shall escape out of his hand, even Edom and Moab, and the chief of the children of Ammon. He shall stretch forth his hand also upon the countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. But he shall have power over the treasures of gold and of silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt, and the Libyans and Ethiopians shall be at his steps. But tidings out of the east and out of the north shall trouble him. Therefore shall he go forth with great fury to destroy, and utterly make away many. And he shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas, and the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. And at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince which standeth for the children of thy people, and there shall be a time of trouble, such as was never since there was a nation, even to that same time. And at the time thy people shall be delivered, every one that shall be found written in the book. And many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. And they that be wise shall shine as the brightness of the firmament, and they that turn many to righteousness as the stars forever and ever. But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words, and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. Then I, Daniel, looked, and behold, there stood other two, the one on this side of the bank of the river, and the other on that side of the bank of the river. And one said to the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, How long shall it be to the end of these wonders? And I heard the man clothed in linen, which was upon the waters of the river, when he held up his right hand and his left unto heaven, and swear by him that liveth forever, that it shall be for a times and a half. And when he shall have accomplished to scatter the power of the holy people, all these things shall be finished. And I heard, but I understood not. Then said I, O my Lord, what shall be the end of these things? And he said, Go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. Many shall be purified and made white and tried, But the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. And from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. Blessed is he that waiteth, and cometh to the 1,330 days. But thou, go thy way till the end be, for thou shalt rest and stand in thy lot at the end of the days. The end of the days. The end of the days is when the days are all ended. When you stand in your lot in the judgment of God. This time I decided to read into 12. Sometimes I like to put that context when we're about to say, because it's really fascinating to me the way the angel kind of turns it off there. It really, the volume goes up, 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 and then it's sort of like, and they say stuff. He said, seal up the book, Daniel. Now in Revelation it says, open the book, for the time is at hand. Now, yet, like a lot of the contradictions we observe, and I, contradictions to me is just something that says the opposite of what I think, okay? And so it's not necessarily, I don't think God contradicts himself, but he contradicts me in my thoughts, at least. Because I think that means, like, I'm inclined to be like, okay, well, that was the time, right? It's like, well, unless, of course, it wasn't. And the book was written for the time that it's unsealed. But what about Daniel? It says the book is sealed, but seal up the book. I would say that the advent of Revelation was an opening of the book. But yet there remains things mysterious and things yet within that opening. Every time the angel gives a revelation, there's always mysteries. Look at when Jesus comes. He speaks in parables. This is how it works with God. He let us know. It's not like we don't know. Like, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal, thou shalt not commit. These things, he definitely hit us with the hammer of objective truth. You know what I mean? We know what right and wrong basically is. We know what that looks like. And we kind of have a pretty good idea what a detailed version of that looks like, too. There's some arguments we may have around matters of conscience. And, of course, there's a great argument with the ungodly. Because a godless mind can never be made subject to the law of God, because you have to fear him in your heart. Anyways, what I was saying, one of the things I want to address was they should be holpen with a little holpen with a little help. I just want to switch the vowels there. They should be holpen with a little hope. I expect it to be, but it's a kind of a hard phrase to turn. Holpen with a little help. And I guess that's an archaic form of the word help. I just was wondering if in Hebrew, if that's, they shall be helped with a little help. Or was it just an alliteration of the same word? Or what was going on there? And that was verse 34, right? Okay. It's hard to talk and think at the same time, believe me. So you think before you speak. Well, the thoughts are all there. And they understand when people shall instruct men, to know that they shall be holpen, azar, to help or succor. Okay, to comfort in a sense, with a little. That's little in the sense of fewness. That's interesting. Help. Helpers. Yeah, it's azer. Okay, it's a verb. It's a verb of the sentence. So they shall receive help from few helpers. I'm glad we looked at that. But many shall cleave to them with flatteries. See, they're like, when you put it in context, like, you understand, it's like among the people who you think might help you, many of them are going to be flatterers. There will be opportunity. Like I was said, I found in the pandemic there was help. There was people who, because you know why? They didn't enforce it to the degree that I know they do other places. We pushed the boundaries here in our town, and and I know my brother pushed it even more because he refused to ever let a mask even touch his face, except when he went to the hospital for his wife. Just because it was like, well, you gotta, sometimes you do, and it's a matter of conscience anyways. Because like I said, it's not the mark of the beast, but man, exercise yourself a little bit. Exercise your little. It was your job so important that you'd compromise that principle. That's disappointing, man. Okay? I'm just saying. It's not like the end of the world. It's like we all sin. It's come short of the glory of God. I'm just saying, like, that's dangerous territory. Dangerous territory. Just letting you know. Especially when you violate your conscience. It's one thing if you were convinced or deceived. But that's still, in the end times, you know what's going to happen? Deception. So, Though that was a different form of deception, I'm telling you, as someone who studied the Bible a long time and thought about these things since I was a kid, I was thinking about the book of Revelation and stuff and listening to all the stuff everybody had to say on TV and in books and stuff. And I still have no idea. I know I know the basic shape of what's going to take place, but I still can't precisely tell anybody. Like, like the exact series of events. It's like because if you look at all the different prophecies, there's a lot of murk. And if Daniel 11 doesn't prove that to you, then I don't know. Some people would rebel at the very sound of that murk being in the Bible. But to me, that is exactly what God demonstrated on Mount Sinai, right? He came down in a black cloud of smoke. It was like this mystery. Oh my, it's God in this murky, nobody can see and penetrate the darkness that surrounds the mountain, which is on fire because God is about to give the law, thou shalt not kill. And the truth law, and you know why he says, he doesn't tell us, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart and all thy might and all thy strength, because he needs it. It's because it's what appropriate for us. It's like what we ought to do. It's what we ought to do. It's the natural response. Like I said, children, obey your parents. Humans, worship your God. And worship God in truth and in spirit. Because that's what he seeks those to worship him in. So like I said, you can expect to find a little help. Not much. Look at what Elijah found. He found a widow woman with a few measures of meal or something. What was it, right? And a little bit of oil. A cruse of oil, whatever measure that be. A container of oil. Just one little bottle of oil. A little measure of oil. And I've got 3 measures of barley for a penny. Right from the book of Revelation. Similar type of things. There's scarcity. All that stuff, you have to deal with that. Notice it doesn't say we're going to be the Lord's people are going to be starving to death necessarily, because the time of Antichrist is actually probably going to be a time of a sort of plenty, probably, because it'll be a celebrative time for a lot of people. It's going to be unlike the pandemic in a more diabolical way, in that the whole world is going to be kind of excited, and you're going to have to crap on their excitement instead of on their fear and their panic. It's one thing to tell someone, don't be so panicked. Don't be so panicked. That's what we had to do this time. Don't be so fearful. Well, the end times are going to be a fearful time. I'm always sort of confused about, the plagues and all the devastation that goes on with the trumpets and all that. I'm not sure, and I always thought of that as these natural events that happen that precede, meaning we have in my belief, if it's the end times, we're going to get a meteor strike at some point here, and I don't really like the idea of living through that. Like I said, there's a lot... by fire, hey, some of us go by fire. And it's not the wrath of God. It's just, that's, sometimes that's the way the planet goes. Sometimes you fall in a volcano. It's not, no strange thing has befallen you. You have lived your life righteously or whatever. All men die and then the judgment. So you have faith. Don't, like I said, never, don't throw your life away. If I'm going to die, I want to die for something good, or I'm going to have something big come along and kill me, I don't know, but whatever. If it's a mob or a bear, I don't know. I try to avoid the bears. Don't poke the bears. State Department, all right? Okay. So we're picking up at verse 38 now. You have help available. I always like to say that. Like the earth's going to swallow up part of that flood. They're going to be deceived, but there's also an element. Like I said, just with the pandemic, some people kind of knew. But they went along with it anyways. I know a lot of people like that, actually. That's what disappointed me most deeply, was all the good conservative people in my very good conservative district, all just conservatively obeying authority, just like good conservatives do. And that's when I realized, though I kind of had a tendency towards conservatism, it's like all my life I've sort of pushed against being like that because of basically, it's a sort of innocence in a way, a trust in things that I don't think are trustworthy, and just the things are, we should just, it's best to do what you're told and follow the rules, and do, when people who are above you tell you what to do, and you probably should listen because it's a good idea. Like I said, children should obey their parents. Well, I'm not a child. I'm one of the adults in the room, and I have a right. But this is America. This is not some sort of despotic, big brother society. Well, they're trying to make it into that. It actually is that, sort of. If you put up with it, if we put up with it, it no doubt will get worse. Let me see. My mouse is just. This mouse is not. I have this new mouse that is supposed to be able to switch computers with it, but it's like, oh, there we go. Okay. Sorry about that. So I need to go away from that other page. The God of hope and little hope. I didn't bring up you didn't actually see the definitions. I'm sorry about that. All right. We're not going to go back, and I'm sure you believe me. Okay, so now back to verse 38. In his estate he will honor the God of forces. Let's look at that word in Hebrew, and this time I will bring it up for you. And I'm going to bring it up for me in a way I can read it. The God of forces, which Ma'oz, a place or means of safety or protection. And sometimes translated fortresses. I didn't look at other. Let's see if the word is used rather extensive in the Bible. Yeah, my strength and my fortress, Jeremiah 16:19. Isaiah 30, therefore shall the strength of Pharaoh. See again? Isaiah 30, verse 3. Are you able to see that? Sort of. I'll make it a little narrower here. This would probably help. A little more. So I don't always have this at the right width. Well, that's all I can see. So wait, maybe if I just scoot this over. There we go. Okay, there we go. And this is the New Englishman's Concordance entries. It tells you, this is what I like about Bible Hub. They have all these they have the built-in New Englishman's and the built-in Brown Driver Briggs. There's these huge, thick books that I have, but I never touch them anymore, which is a delight. As I don't mind seeing ads for the Federalist Papers. That's fine with me. All right. Of the stronghold, and you can follow along too on the same page. And then here it's on the top of this rock in Judges. So it's truly like a literal, like natural fortress. It says stronghold in another translation, because that's what they meant. But it was a rock, I think, in the story, or whatever. They often use such places. Be thou my strong rock. I like that. Be thou my strong rock there in Psalm 31. So you see the way it gets used. So the God of safety, right? I'm going to make everybody safe. I'm going to save everybody. Yeah. That's what it sounds like to me, at least in this context. Because by peace he shall destroy many. Because people are going to so crave the peace that he will be able to bring. Because, what terrifies me about the direction we're heading, and I don't see us stopping. Like I said, I support Robert F. Kennedy because he's anti-war, and I kind of feel like Trump deserves to be fired for, but if he loses to Biden, I will certainly vote for Trump. I won't vote for Biden, ever. I want to vote against him more than once is what I want to do. I'm going to vote against him 2 times this election. That's not that I don't feel, like I said, in the general, I would continue to support him. Just because I think our candidate is so thoroughly poisoned. It's like, it's hard. He's not useful to the company anymore, and when that happens, you know what happens? You say you're fired when someone's not. And I love the person. I love that. I love him, but he's a bit crass. And like I said, I've compared him unfavorably to Antichrist. All right. So I'm not, and like I said, to me, it's like all people. I could compare myself to unfavorably to Antichrist. And who do you think you are, Paul? Taking up God's word in your mouth, that gets dangerous. It is dangerous when you speak in the name of God. It's dangerous territory. You best be very careful. I sit here, I'm saying I'm giving you stuff that's like intelligent Christian advice and stuff, as far as what to do about prophecy. I take a very practical view of prophecy. I hope that comes out. It's like, because I'm like, well, what else are we going to do? I'm going to get all predictive about it? Come on. Somewhat. Let's predict what we can, but more, if we're going to speculate, let's call it what it is, right? The God of forces, God of fortresses, places of safety. Sounds like safety culture on some level, right? I may be reading that into it. Guilty as charged. But I still think it is an interesting thought, and I do think a kernel of that exists in it. Because what I've been thinking the whole time we've been studying this chapter, because that was a new thought that just came to me today. I was thinking of it as the God of power above all else, which is interesting because those are the two things that they hold, right? On one hand, it's a sort of like obsession with safety. We got to keep everybody safe. They got to be so safe that they don't even have bad feelings. We don't want people to have bad feelings or even like think anything negative about themselves, even if they may have some major health problems or whatever, or just personality issues. Like, no, it's not that you're, whatever gender, this or that. It's you're a rude, horrible person. That's why nobody likes you. It has nothing to do with all the reason you're not respected in society is your behavior is bad. You're blaming all this stuff that I can't even tell about you unless you telegraph it to me. That's why you're having problems in society. I'll tell you what. If I went around telling people what I like to do in the bedroom, I'd have all kinds of problems in society. What? I mean, what? Wouldn't I? Shouldn't I? I mean, seriously. Come on. Grow up. Become adults. Safety. I believe in. I'm a very cautious parent. I'm a very protective parent. But I also know that part of being protective is getting your kids ready to be adults and to be strong and formidable and to be able to endure the temptations of this life, understanding yourself as you should that they exist. And I don't expect them to be morally better than me without me actually doing something to help them, like raise them right, give them good directions, and be a proper good discipline as a parent and all that. Tell them the right things, all that, And it's a responsibility. But they have this obsession with safety and also this obsession with power and using power to enforce this safety for people. So they use their power to shut your mouth so that you never misgender someone, which is an oxymoron. Because every time they say misgendering, you're actually correctly gendering. I think, unless, because it is wrong. I've been misgendered. I've been called a sissy when I was a kid and stuff. I go, you girl, you throw like a girl. It's an insult to misgender someone. And so I guess if someone's trying to look like a woman, it is an insult to tell her she's a he. But I always say, like, if you look like a man, I'm sorry, I don't stop noticing. If you're not passing, then you don't get pronouns. Sorry. No, because if I can't tell that that's not a woman, I'm going to call that individual a she until they draw it to my attention that they've got something under the hood, which I really don't want to know. I don't want to interfere with your life. I think what you've done is insane and wrong. But I don't hate you by any means, and I don't desire any harm to come to such people. I think they should be loved, and they're obviously hurting badly to think that they have to change themselves that much to be acceptable. You know what I mean? How badly would you be hurting to think you had to change yourself completely like that to be acceptable to people? You couldn't just walk out and be a human the way you are. And not just the way you are. But the thing is, it's like, because you know what the problem is? If I just am the way I am, what is the way I am? There's no passive way to be who you are. You know what I mean? Like, I didn't become the man I am by sitting on a couch all the time, by playing video games nonstop as a kid. I played video games as a kid, but I also joined sports, and I also worked out, and I also did other things. I didn't just bury myself in the online world or something where, I see some of these kids, they don't look well formed physically. They haven't been doing enough activity. And because a lot of vigorous activity is good for human bodies. And when you're young, unless you have a disease or a sickness, there's really no reason not to get that, except parents maybe not encouraging it, parents even preventing, or poor nutrition. A lot of that's ignorance. But the thing is, it's like, to make people truly safe, it's not a balance of like, oh, I'm going to make everything safe for you. I'm going to do everything for you. That's not how our Savior, he does save us at the ultimate, because ultimately we can't save ourselves. But also in our walk with God, he gently leads us. He does not force us per se, though God does interfere in the affairs of men when he chooses us. That gift and calling comes without repentance, it is so, I do believe grace is irresistible, but it is not forced. It is a quality of it that it is irresistible. Like that which is irresistible overcomes nothing. Like force implies to me something that is closed, like a door. You know what I mean? Grace is someone coming to you and saying, I forgive you. How can you resist this? You can say you resist it. You can say, but it's like you've been forgiven by the one who is able to forgive. And so there is, it inevitably swallows you up. So I do believe that. But I don't believe it is like crammed down our throats, because that's not how the faith is experienced. Though I do think I would call it, I would not deny that there is an intimacy. And that's what we desire of God, is to get closer to God. But there's a sense in which if God was hovering in a cloud constantly out your window with flaming fire, threatening destruction on anyone who should sin, in a way that was very visible and apparent, that is one way. That's the God of force. He enforces it by his constant vigilance over us and enforcing his diktats and all that. But instead, God has made the world where we are even able to believe in our foolish hearts that he doesn't even exist, that this is all just here by chance, or be just because it is. It's magic. All that is. So, well, God is magic. Yeah, but at least we know. But at least it's a magic that makes more sense to me, and then maybe it doesn't to you, but it does. After you've had God encounters with God and gotten intimate with God. If you've sought him for a time, even if you haven't sought him, there's never too late to start seeking him now. If you seek him, you find him, man. I'm not screwing around. If you're not ready for it, it's more than, I'll tell you what, it has not been entirely easy, because it's like I aimed high, and I don't regret it, but I may regret it a bit. We'll see. But God does not he didn't force that on us. It's like I willingly desired it myself. Just like sin. God doesn't do temptation. We are led astray of our own lust. And the same thing with salvation. Grace is irresistible, but also the call to righteousness is. You know what I mean? The call to righteousness is resistible. You can resist that. And a lot of things about God. And I don't take that call to grace irresistible. That's just a fanciful thought I just had. Don't take it too far, please. Well, because I believe in irresistible grace. But I also understand, like from my experience, that God is not cramming himself down my throat. Though, compared to some people, maybe I feel like he is. Because I've always felt, not always. Well, I felt a strong interest in God as a young person, but the world seemed void of him. I mean, I see now in retrospect, it looks like, no, not void. But, God is much more not present than he seemed present. When, you're distracted and deceived by the things that the world holds up as things that are desirable and pleasurable and tempting. Okay. But the God of forces and a God, so I'm taking that in two directions, and I think they both are kind of true. A God who his fathers knew not shall honor with gold, silver, with precious stones, and pleasant things. And that's, and it is sort of like we put our treasure into the things that we care most about, right? And in the book of Revelation, you see in Mystery Babylon, which is it is like looking at the human religion that crops up, that is worshiping the dragon, that is his bride, that is the bride of Satan. And it is also, it is the apostasy. It is the culmination it is the apostasy of apostasies, all right? Apostasy is already in the world, Antichrist is already in the world, but yet there is a great apostasy yet to come. And we've seen them in the past, during the Roman times there were apostasies where people, they gave up the faith so that they could save their lives. And some of them wanted to come back afterwards. And it's, it's like, hey, Peter, especially some, depends on how grievous it was, right? Did they betray others? Or did they were scared and young and or put to the torture to test it to the limit of human bearing, and then they denied the Lord. I think the Lord understands. It's not so much when you're being tortured and you deny Christ that he's going to be upset with you. It's when you're not being friggin' tortured and you deny him. You say, and what have we denied him? In works, you have denied him because you did not obey him. We all have, With great swelling words, but in works they deny him. So, and that's how this, the works you do, the things that's why the mark of the beast is also attached to the hand, because it has to do with the work. And what does work bring? Well, that's where you get the gold and silver. Precious stones. My work is all converted into these portable goods, pleasant things, manufactured good, precious stones, gold, silver, the merchandise of gold and of silver and of precious stones, of pearls and of ointments and fine linen and all that stuff. I don't know if I have that. That's a hard list to keep memorized straight. I have to sing it. It works a little better. And I don't want to sing right now. I don't want. No, it's not. In the most strongholds with a strange God, again, it's not. It's like I said. It's like there is. What's really interesting about the times we live in? There is a strange religion. Like everyone, it's not exactly a religion, right? It's not. It's like we observe cultic behavior. Christians who, if any time you watch stuff and think about things, you're just a consumer of Christian, media and stuff over time. Not that I'm much now, but when I was young, I was. I watched things like John Ankerberg and stuff like that. I'm familiar with all that stuff. But I was. I don't even know if John Ankerberg is alive. I can never tell how old the guy is. He's one of those guys who looks like an elf or something, like he never ages, okay? God bless him, all right? I'm not a fan, but, I don't want to judge another man's servant right now. I think there's this is a time when I don't, I still talk about Arnold Murray, but it's like I do tend to think we should circle the wagons a bit and be a little more tolerant of our brethren, especially those who are not falling to this truly strange God. You know what I mean? The differences between the way I think about statues and a Catholic thinks about statues is not significant enough for me, especially because I'm an artist that makes cartoons and stuff. It's not significant enough for me. What they think about Mary, not significant. It never has been that significant for me. I forgive them. I think Mary forgives them, but it's all right. And I'm sure they think God forgives you, Paul. Or maybe he won't. I'm not a good Catholic. Well, doesn't he judge me by where I am? Okay. And most strong, because again, it's like the march to the institutions with the Marxists. They go through the strongholds, the fortresses, the places of safety. And what it's funny because they want to talk. They're literally almost putting up big signs over a university saying, "This is a safe space, safe space. This is a fortress right here. So this is a fortress that they're going to take over and use for Satan's work." These are the fortresses. When you have an empire like America, where the power is derived by the consent of the people, then what the danger, obviously, in it, what has come to pass, is the manufacturing of consent, which leftists pointed out. I think there's Noam Chomsky, who I disagree with on a gazillion things, but he's right about a number of things too. The man has insights. You gotta, we give account of every idle word in the judgment, but that isn't to say that like the things that people who have things to say that aren't right, they might not have other things to say that are right, and so it begins that they start to capture the intellectuals and the institutions and the levers of power in order to be able to convince the populace to install more and more demagogic governments until you end up with a dictatorship. They promise more and more to the people. That's why he's going to divide among them the spoil and the prey. Just like the communists promise, everyone's got chicken in every pot, and at least on day one, anyways, right? Until because we killed the chicken farmer, now there's no more chickens, but we'll feast for a day, So whatever. I mean, they found this. The Russians figured this out over their communist thing, and they just, You can't outright take everything away from everybody. You create disaster. You have to have a country that works, not a country that just rapes itself. And not that we can't have social programs and stuff. We're a very wealthy nation. But we also have to have safeguards to help people so they don't get trapped on these programs. It's like we could be elevating people beyond this. You know what I mean? That's what I think is, we don't necessarily, I think they should be reformed, but when Republicans say that, they usually mean like cut. They mean cut money from people, give them less money. It's a way to motivate them to, I guess, get better jobs. It's not exactly, I think, the right solution. Though, there's something, like I said, there's some sort of reform where you help people instead of, you help provide an incentive to move them to something bigger and better. That's what we need more of, and we can afford to do it, And I think in the end it pays for itself because those people become taxpayers, as they elevate themselves into. We have all kinds of skilled jobs that people need to do. And then we're short of labor. We have all kinds of young men that are idle and not at work. It's like. And at the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him. Okay, wait, I went too far. Gold and silver, precious and pleasant things, they shall he do in the most strongholds with a strange God, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory. They glorify their God and just, insisting in the truth of it, and then insisting on the adherence to it. And like I said, it's like when you go contrary to what they say, it's almost akin to blasphemy. And they haven't learned a lot. Like I said, it's a lot of anti-Christianity, so they haven't learned many lessons of forgiveness. In fact, most of it's like a reaction and they want to go in the opposite direction. Because it's like, I understand it's a human impulse to judgment, to judge the wicked. And the problem is that somewhere along the line, like in our world, they decided that, like Donald Trump was so evil. Which to me, he looks just like any other politician. He, kind of slimy or whatever. But at least he was talking about doing things for our country, and not so much warmongering and all that stuff. Though, whatever. He's saber. There's plenty of, There's another thing is I don't think he was as committed to the anti-war position as I feel we should be. Anyways. And in toning down tensions and stuff, let's have peace. So, but they might do this, and they might. Would you just relax? It's like, you know what? I think that us tuning up the heat is what's making people start fight. Yeah. But he's going to increase. So I'm drawing a parallel to our times, but of course the ultimate is the future, which I don't know where we're at. I don't know if we're anywhere near that. I certainly don't think we're. I don't think we have Antichrist on the scene here. Although, I could be wrong about that. Though, honestly, see, I like RFK Jr., but I would expect Antichrist to probably appear more like him, Except maybe not speaking the right things, you know what I mean? But, like, he would look right. He would have, whereas Donald Trump kind of came off as a blowhard and, he didn't have the most winning personality. He's too rough, he's rude. He's not really thinking that he has to count for every idle word, that's for sure. I mean, like I said, I love him like I love a lot of people. I love my enemies even, and I don't consider him my enemy. But no. So, thus shall I do in the most strongholds with a strange God, whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory, and shall cause them to rule over many, and shall divide the land for gain. That line reminds me of the people who are buying up farmland and stuff and trying to obtain the land for themselves. Because the most valuable commodity in the world is land and livestock. If you're talking about ultimately, like when as they say, the excrement hits the fan, right? You want to have some land and livestock. The food prep kits are kind of a farce. Where are you gonna get more of that stuff? Lasts a while. Well, as long as society comes back online, you're good. The thing is, I know I can I can make do for a period. You know what I mean? And there's fasting and all that. But what do you do when the water dries up? All you got left is faith then, I'm telling you. Because the waters are going to dry up. Or be poisoned, actually. They already are, aren't they? Get that reverse osmosis filter. Hopefully they still work in the end times, right? Whom he shall acknowledge and increase with glory, he shall give them over to rule many. Cause them to rule over many. Cause who? Well, I guess those corrupted strongholds. Because like I was saying, like when you manipulate people in America, you get them to believe things that aren't true, and then they vote against their interest. And really, they've got us just between the two parties. It's like most of it is not our interest. The two parties are just control. It's just there's a central sort of control, and there needs to be there has to be some actual division. Because they're trying to divide us over things like race and crap that doesn't matter. Like what color hair you have, basically. What color is your hair? That's my gender. That's what they should do. Just come up with a color code, and they can color their hair, and everyone will know their pronouns if they want to use them. And that's if they want to use them. At the time of the end shall the king of the south push at him. Now, I think this feels like a little bit of a rewind. Not exactly like sort of like because it says at the time of the like when it to me I almost think of it as like when it's about to begin at the end of the waiting or sort of like that. Maybe I'm wrong, okay, but like at some point he's going to push him. He's going to come in a whirlwind with chariots of horsemen and many ships, and he shall enter into the countries and shall overflow and pass over. This has been said several times. That's why I'm saying it's a bit of a rewind. Because I don't know how many times Antichrist is really going to come in, like Antichrist of Antichrist, say, the devil's ultimate version of this. When this comes about, I'm not sure. Like, how many outbreaks is he going to have? Is it going to be just one overflow? Is it going to be overflowing in different places and times geographically? The earth is a big place, even for Satan. And he's already got, like, all kinds of ground troops. He's got a great ground game, man. Satan's got the best ground game ever, man. He's got his proponents running around, pumping up the media with all kinds of lies. Oh, yeah, he's got a ground game, all right. And when his man arrives on the scene, he will come in like a flood and storm everything, and people are going to be wiped out, man. They're just going to be like, whoa, overwhelmed. But also, I suppose, if there are legitimate military conflicts, he will also have unbridled success in that military conflict if that's what he engages in. And here's the thing. Just because it says by peace he will destroy many, that doesn't mean that he won't engage in military things. But because what is it saying in a sense is like he's going to engage in military things, but also his peace is also destructive. You know what I mean? Because his peace is not the peace of God. It's the peace of a profane, idolatrous, wicked religion. It's not predicated on righteousness, on holiness. It's an abomination. The mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. So then he shall enter also in the glorious land. That refers to the holy land, promised land, Israel. And you can tell because the ones that escape are the near neighbors. Moab, Edom, Moab, and the chief of the children of Ammon. Now, if this is a literal racial prophecy, so it's not a racial thing because they actually would be the same race. They are the Hebrews. Moab and Ammon, and Edom is Jacob's brother. Moab and Ammon are Abraham's nephew's children by Abraham's nephew's own daughter. So, I mean, they're very related. And so they are the near neighbors of Israel historically, though, which they had some conflicts with and some war. But God had always said, you were not to supplant them. You're not to take their land. It doesn't belong to you. And some of that land, I believe, the map of the Middle East isn't clear, but it'd be like the southwest of Israel or from Israel. I don't know if any of that's in Israel now. If it is, I don't know what to make of that, except, there's several thoughts to make of that. Okay, is this referring to those geographic regions? Because I could see sense then it's like, okay, when when he enters into Israel, when he enters into the glorious land to triumph, either to take away the daily sacrifice, I assume, it would make sense that he makes alliances with the Palestinians right there. And so, it's possible that if Antichrist came in supernatural, it would be creepy if he took on an Islamic bent. That would be scary. You know what I mean? If Antichrist came in all Islamic, yeah, because that's going to be some pretty nasty. I saw the souls of them that were beheaded for the testimony of Jesus and for the word of God. I pray it be not so. Not that I fancy this sort of woke thing also either, but, but I could see why at that moment when he's taking away the daily sacrifice, there would be common cause with certainly the land of Edom and Moab and the chief of the children of Ammon. But he shall also stretch forth his hands upon the countries, not the near neighboring countries, but more distant countries, and the land of Egypt shall not escape. So he will have some sort of, and they've been allied with Israel. And he could say to them, you haven't taken care of your brother. You've been wicked towards the Palestinians. Because I'll tell you what, the Arabs haven't exactly been good to each other either. That's not that, and I'll tell you what, I bet the Jews would say the same thing about them. Is that sometimes they're not all nice to each other either. This idea that there's some sort of monolithic group of people that just help each other and they only conspire together. Israel is practically tearing itself apart right now in a dispute over their Supreme Court and their basic, legal system. They have differences with each other. They're not all like, they're not all of one mind. Never have been. I always sort of rebel when people try to, they bring up this anti-Semitism. They're always like, oh, they all work together. And it's like, I know they don't mean every single one, but it's like, I'm a big believer in teamwork and families sticking together. So no, I take it as an admirable trait. You help your family and you help your cousins and you help your countrymen. And also you take care of the wider world. God called Israel to be a blessing to the entire world. And I tell you, Israel, I support Israel's right to exist, of course. But I don't know what your solution is there, but you got to somehow figure something out for those people there, because you've conquered them and you're the victor. Though they're kind of holding your victory hostage, unfortunately. I'm very sympathetic with both sides. It's a tough nut to crack because there's a lot of people in the situation who are making, they're profiting more from the conflict than from what real peace might bring. So, it's worth looking at that political situation in light of what it says here. And also the Ethiopians and the Libyans shall be at his steps. Again, when it says he shall conquer Egypt, now here's another thought. What about this? Okay, I just gave the bad situation. What if this is the thing? Even Moab, the Palestinians, instead of once again getting the shit end of the stick, I'm sorry, I couldn't come up with anything else. For once, they escape the devil and they hear about Jesus, and all the people in those lands are saved. They escape Satan's deception. But Egypt doesn't. Ethiopia doesn't. Libyans don't. They're at his steps, man. Doesn't mean every Ethiopian or every Egyptian. It just means a sort of a wholesale thing. The nation perhaps will come under his sway. Maybe Palestinians will stay rebellious and not fall under the sway of Antichrist, even though he's taken away the daily sacrifice. I don't know. That's another interpretation, okay? See, that it's weird because he escapes out of their hand. Well, in what way? Physically? Spiritually? One of those. Maybe both. Doesn't have to be one or the other. That's true. It could be both. It can't be neither, obviously, because they don't escape. That would be Egypt and Moab. Well, in that case, it could be neither. Like Egypt could neither escape physically nor spiritually. All right, Just like everything in the book of Revelation, it says, "Thou hast a few names in Sardis who have not defiled their garments and who will walk with me in white." When it says the whole, again, remember, eventually, this sounds like it's picking on the Egypt and the Libyans and the Ethiopians. It's the near people of the history. And Egypt was an important part of that kingdom of the south. And I don't know what that kingdom of the south is representing in the end times, whether it's, I can't imagine it being NATO, and I can't imagine it being Russia. I could in some way. China's the kings of the East, if anything, right? That can't be the kings of the South. The kings of the South can be Egypt, that area, the Arabs perhaps. Arabs are good, and also perhaps Africa or whatever. But a lot of these countries are currently in chaos. But still, there's still something, I guess, like I said, there could be something with that geography. What I was saying before is that, remember, eventually all the nations of the world will come under he's going to unite the entire world into one kingdom. And, it's funny, I think the arguments against Nero is because, like, it was not like that. Like, he doesn't really fulfill it, unless you look at it as just a gross exaggeration. The whole thing's a big hyperbole. And I don't really think that's how apocalyptic literature really works. I know that's how people think it works. Some people, unbelievers mostly. But I know there's murk and mystery. Mystery is a little different than murk, by the way, because mystery is something that's like maybe not obvious, but often refers to something that is actually revealed. Like that you may not have even known it existed. Like, this is a mystery. But I speak of Christ and the church. Oh, it's like, the mysterious nature of the union. It doesn't mean like something like, oh, I can't understand. It's like, no, it's a mystery because it's like the union between Christ and the church is like a bride and her husband in the spirit. And, and if you've ever been married, you can understand that spirit, especially if you're a man. And divorced from the sexual part. I mean, you got to think of it in those terms, and like the excitement, the joy, the delight. As the bridegroom rejoiceth over the bride. But he shall have power over the treasures of gold and silver, and over all the precious things of Egypt. Okay, but tidings out of the east and out of the north shall trouble him. Yeah, so he's the king of the north, but there's north above him. That's interesting. Yeah, like I said, we are the latter time of his kingdom. Like when I think of Western civilization, like when we learned about it in school, we started with ancient Greece. Though the Hebrew Bible, of course, is a major foundation stone for Western civilization, it can't be said to be the foundation stone. Yeah, I mean, because Greek philosophy, separate, was a form of wisdom that began for the West first. The Bible entering later, but having a huge impact, of course. Changing forever our trajectory from a pretty barbarous, the Greeks and Romans were every bit as barbaric as their neighbors to the north. The bar part only referred to the beards. That's all. So Satan has great wrath, so he knows he has but a short time. It could be military conquest, but also just in a sense of deceit, lies, by peace shall destroy many. I'm never sure exactly which one it's talking about. I have ideas, and you get like maybe 40-60, feeling like maybe this is more likely than the other. It's hard to tell. And see, yes, I know I'm like the scribes. I'm not as one having authority, but I teach, this is what they say, because sometimes it's like that. Other things, thankfully, when we take on the mantle of Christ and we preach the gospel, we can speak with authority. I mean, I always speak with absolute authority when I speak of salvation, when I speak of the cross of Christ. And you'll never hear me dither or equivocate about the way to be saved. There's no but one way under heaven whereby we must be saved. And that's through faith in Jesus Christ. He shall plant the tabernacles of his palace between the seas and the glorious holy mountain. Yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. That's like a reference. Between the seas and the glorious holy mountain. That is the two seas. I'm not sure if it would be the Mediterranean and what else he would have, or like the Sea of Galilee, and then or maybe the Red Sea. the Dead Sea, if you threw that in, and like think of it, Jerusalem is kind of at the center of that, because that's what it's talking about. He shall plant the tabernacle of his palace. I mean, the temporary place of his dwelling. Like God used to dwell around in a tabernacle, and they moved this tent around, and that was the place where they offered their sacrifices to God. And eventually, because they wanted it, and because the king wanted to build it, God allowed them to build the temple. He was always reluctant to have this. God was never like, build me a temple. God sought us to worship him in spirit and truth. It wasn't like about, carved stones and beautiful buildings. But man sort of needs that in a way. We need to look at some structure. We need to have a fortress to look to. But the thing, it gives Satan a target. Because we trust in those fortresses, and it gives him something to go after, to threaten our safety, to threaten our salvation even. And, and to be entering into those strongholds. And he will plant his tabernacle of his palace, of his rule, his kingdom, between the seas in the glorious holy mountain, in the sides of the north, where it was said of the king of Babylon, how art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, bright sire, son of the dawn, Halel ben Shakar, however you want to translate it. How art thou brought down to the ground, which did weaken the nations? How art thou cut down to the ground, which did weaken the nations? You said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. How beautiful for situation, Psalm 40 says, is Mount Zion in the sides of the north. Was that Psalm 40? I think so. So I'm not good with the numbers. Other we make away many, he shall plant the tabernacle. Yet he shall come to his end, and none shall help him. And we know what happens at the end. Michael comes down. At that time shall Michael stand up. Yes, that's right. He comes down. I saw an angel come down from heaven, having a great chain in his hand. I assume that's Michael, And he laid hold on the dragon, that old serpent, called the devil and Satan. And he binds him for 1,000 years. And then after that, he's loosed out of the bottomless pit for a short time to deceive the nations. And they are deceived. And then he meets his end. He's cast in the lake of fire. And as it says, and shall be tormented forever and ever. And I believe in that, but like I said, I believe in a sort of a spiritual way. I don't think it's like the grotesquerie of... I don't think it requires his consciousness even. I think people are way too ghoulish about this. They don't have to be conscious. It's more of a lesson learned permanently type thing. Information extracted. Interrogation successful. That's the way I look at it. So we'll continue tomorrow in chapter 12. I think we've covered this about as good as we can. We know he's going to take over the world. We know he's going to seduce people to worship him and to worship Satan. In particular, he will exalt himself and also at the same time be honoring a God. You know what I mean? Because like I said, you don't have to explicitly talk about a God to be honoring it. You know what I mean? Like I said, because like I said, we have a safety culture. Everything must bow to safety. We all got to stay safe. Though that's dangerous. That's the problem, is that people don't understand that trying to stay absolutely safe is a dangerous posture. The best way to be safe is to be flexible. And so you don't want to be like, in a situation where you are cowering. Safety is a value of some import. Okay, I mean, of course, but again, like we've taken it up as this mantra of just it's based on such a misunderstanding and fear. Safety based out of fear is not safety. You know what I mean? Like if we're seeking safety because we're afraid, well, I mean, yeah, but I guess if we have to be sure that it's a rational fear, is what I will say. Is this a rational fear, and is this a fear that is contrary to my faith and to my conviction And then I need to repent of fearing such things, like fearing speaking the truth or fearing doing the right thing. You know what I mean? Those fears, staying safe for that reason, is sinful. You know, and it's I understand fully well, but it's, you know, you get into wicked territory there when we do that. I ain't saying I never did that. I'm just saying, like, I've learned as an adult to stand up. Like I said, sometimes people, you know, it's like I know a younger me isn't up to the challenges of the older me, okay? And so when I see a younger you, believe me, I look at all of you or anybody I know with grace. I do. Though the judgment sometimes is harsh, you know, right? The truth is not comforting sometimes. It's provocative because we are out of line, you know. Anyways, thanks for joining me. Look forward to being back again tomorrow. Maybe even we'll be able to get it, huh? Okay. Until then, remember the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy.